I also I've got some slides to share. Thanks so much. That was so interesting. I feel I was like a sponge absorbing all of that, and things start to make a bit more sense. I love when you get people from different disciplines coming together to talk about an issue. So that was great. But thanks so much for having me along. I guess I'm going to speak about this from a sort of online world, social media perspective. I think there's loads of stuff that we can do to combat or to think about eco-anxiety in the quote like real world. Some of that was alluded to, but I know for me, particularly in the last 2 years, I've spent much more time online. I've spent much more time online alone, in the sense of I work from home. I communicate with friends a lot more online, or have been, and so it's a big part of our world. But I thought I would, I guess, introduce myself a little bit, because probably as well my work sits in the online sphere more than most. So I just thought I'd like put in a couple of slides about who I am to just paint a bit of a picture before, I guess, diving into this big topic. But yeah, so my name's Laura. I'm actually in Glasgow, so it's nice to be virtually with you in Aberdeen. I've got family up in Aberdeen. That's my Aberdeen connection. We were chatting about that before the call started. And I've been passionate about, sustainability, the environment for a long time. And when I was at school, I, really felt a passion for the subject geography, which led me to go and learn about this at university. So I've got an undergraduate and a postgraduate degree from Dundee and then from Edinburgh. I've not quite made it up to Aberdeen yet. Maybe that'll be for another time. But I've loved learning about this, from an academic perspective, all the way through to, enjoying documentaries like Blue Planet and just, loving to see our beautiful planet. But of course, you learn kind of some of the devastating facts about the way that we are changing our world. But one of the big things for me was in 2018, I decided to do a New Year's resolution. And that resolution was to live with less waste. And it was basically because I was in my final year of university. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life after graduating. Blue Planet had been on our screens. So this was the kind of time that we'd seen this. And on a New Year's Day walk along a beach in Ely, so East Coast, but just a bit further south than you, we were talking, me and my friends and family, about, New Year's resolutions, things we were going to get up to in the year. And because I had such an uncertain year, I thought maybe it'd be fun to just set myself a little New Year's kind of challenge, something to keep me going, even though I'm not sure what my year might look like. And as we were walking along this beach, we started to come across kind of plastic, litter, fishing paraphernalia, lots of different stuff. And it was on that day, the 1st of January 2018, I decided to start thinking about this a bit more seriously, and I decided to set myself that challenge. But one of the things I started getting was lots of messages from friends and family saying, what was that shampoo bar brand that you were talking about? What was that shop that you find things plastic free? Do you know anything about this, that, or the other thing? And I really felt like I needed to start writing stuff down. I sucked at English, so I thought, what's the shortest way to write things down? And often that's when you think about social media, you think about tweets or Instagram posts or Facebook. And so I decided to start an online account under the name Less Waste Laura, simply because I was trying to live with less waste. And it's been kind of going ever since then. But I just think that's important for you to know that, I guess, 4 years ago now, I made a really conscious decision to kind of enter the world of environmental online spaces. But I didn't really know where it was going to go. It just kind of started as something fun. But now, so we are kind of 4 and a bit years on from that. I've since done a master's, I've graduated, and I've begun working. I am now a working person, working adult. I love it. And I spend my time working part-time for an international development agency called Tier Fund. And, that involved doing things like being at COP, which was a real privilege, but it also just involves chatting to people, particularly based in the UK, about climate. I do events. So when I'm not working for that charity, I do kind of freelance stuff, coming to events like this, doing work with schools and working at other organisations. But again, something I felt was relevant is a lot of my work sits within media and social media spheres, sharing about either my experiences, whether that's day-to-day stuff, particularly on social media, or whether that is commenting on, world events, news events, things that are happening in the media. So particularly radio, BBC Radio Scotland. I'm also one of the Sky contributors. But one of the things that this means is I do a lot of my work in the kind of public domain, and I do a lot of stuff online, and I spend a lot of time reading about climate and particularly taking a lot of my news from online spaces. And I just thought that is to kind of paint a bit of a picture of the experience I have, but also the experience that I experience every single day. So it's something that I've banked up for the last few years, but it's also kind of what my everyday looks like. I guess we've heard loads about, why we have these feelings. And I think that was such a helpful introduction to kind of recognizing it. But I wanted to give a little bit more of an online perspective when we think about why we might feel climate anxiety, particularly in the online space. One of the phrases that I feel came out of kind of the pandemic is this doom scrolling. I don't know if anyone else has done it. It's when something happens, and it's not even something to do with climate, it might be COVID, it might be climate, it might be the situation in Ukraine, and something, maybe it was Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, I don't know, but something happens, and then you just find yourself scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and you almost kind of go down rabbit holes of articles and links, and you start finding people on Twitter. Twitter's the worst place for it, I think. But doom scrolling is something that is happening more and more because we have real-time commentary on events that are happening. We have almost endless articles, commentaries, whether it's threads of people's inner thoughts, or whether that's YouTube videos or podcasts dissecting every single issue. But I guess that's one of the real things that we need to be aware of when it comes to climate. I was trying to reflect on all the things that give me climate anxiety, especially when I'm online. There's a lot of misinformation out there. One of the things that I had a privilege of doing was going to university to study climate. But what that gives you is this real frustration when you kind of see people online who are, I guess, denying the existence of really robust science, or maybe have a lack of understanding or a lack of nuance around certain issues. I guess you can almost in real time see threads just going right off in the wrong direction, and you think, no, this is so not right, and we need to rein this back in, and you almost feel that urge to jump in and correct what's happening, and that can it can feel a lot of weight. And I've also put in the misinformation in brackets negative outlooks, because I think often we also see a lot of climate news that has a huge negative wave over it. And often that's put on things maybe too quickly, or maybe it's put over something when there is actually good news inside a story, even if it's not the whole picture. So we see a lot of misinformation when we are scrolling, which can be often really frustrating. I find that also it consumes a lot of my time, and it can sometimes feel like quite an arduous task. Particularly when we get stuck in that doom scrolling, we can often just feel this real heavy weight, all from something, the size of your hand. You just feel like you're being sucked into your screen a little bit because it's something we're really passionate about. And also, it is open access. So many platforms are just open to anyone. Often, if you have kind of open public accounts, which many of us need for the work that we do, you end up kind of having anyone and everyone being able to drop in, and sometimes you have to deal with negative comments or really difficult scenarios that kind of come your way. But I also, I guess, wanted to kind of share another way that I think climate anxiety can sit on people, particularly people who speak about climate issues, whether that's through organizations like yourselves, whether that's as individuals, maybe it's the organization they work for. And I think there is an element of anxiety and climate anxiety activists get, particularly around the really high expectations that we have placed upon us. I've pulled out like a couple of examples to kind of illustrate my point a little bit, because often activists are trying their best to get their message out there, whether that is, actions on social media, speaking at events, doing interviews in the media. And we are so highly criticized for anything that we do. This picture in the middle was, these might be kind of, they felt quite famous when they happened at the time. There was this interview on talk radio where someone from, I think it was Insulate Britain came on, And he had some really great points to say, but the interviewer found out that he was a carpenter and just went off on this tangent about, well, if you're a carpenter, does that not mean you're cutting down trees? And does that not mean that you're contributing to climate change? And suddenly the tiniest speck of anything that this kind of interviewer could criticize him for, he did. And, it's really hard to think that, someone's employment is under scrutiny when he had a really good message to go and share about on the radio. There was another example on LBC just a couple of days ago where an activist from Just Stop Oil came on and ended up gluing himself to the microphone. And regardless of what you think of that kind of action, the Twitter world just kind of pulled this whole thing apart with tweets. So these on the left, one guy, just saying, just criticizing the guy without even hearing what he said. And lots of other people were pointing out that the glue that he used probably came from oil. And so he's contributing to, and you think, we can easily run away. And I think a lot of these criticisms and I guess negative attitude, not just to climate, but to the kind of activism world, can really contribute to the feelings of climate anxiety that we have, because we are, really coming up against a lot of barriers in the online world. I even put a personal one just on the right, just to indulge myself for a moment. And it's not actually about the award, but we're not really talking about that, but I won an award. It's not really that big a deal, but I posted about it because I was proud of kind of the fact that someone who has a climate background had won this thing. And I got a message on LinkedIn from some girl who she thought that I was wearing a fast fashion dress and was criticizing the fact that I was wearing fast fashion to an award show where supposedly I was winning something for climate action. And I just felt like, how are we supposed to do anything, any work, when I'm fearful that whenever I post something, I'm going to get criticized for something completely random, nothing to do with what I was posting about or talking about. She was actually wrong. I borrowed the dress from my mum and she bought it 4 years ago. So I don't think it's the same dress that she was talking about. But I think there is this, real sometimes fear around wanting to share messages around the climate or be able to do our work. And if it's a fear of criticism, it's a fear of, where's this going to go? Is this going to get on? A lot of people talk about, the wrong side of social media. Suddenly enough people comment on it on a negative way and it kind of spirals. And I just wanted to, I guess, recognize that often it's not a kind of contribution that we think about when we think about eco-anxiety, but it's definitely something that I'm seeing more and more of online. However, there are some solutions. And I wanted to, I guess, hopefully just leave you with a few really practical takeaways. I absolutely loved hearing our previous speaker and really hearing about, the meaty academics behind it to understand all of this stuff. But I'm just going to give you some tips, some things that I've found, I guess, over the past couple of years that have helped me, particularly when it comes to avoiding or mitigating eco-anxiety, which stems from online stuff. Number one, I have limited my phone use. I have been really tried hard to not be glued to my phone, and particularly with different apps, really try and limit the amount that I use them. I guess sometimes you can actually go onto specific apps, limit them for a number of hours, or you can put them into little locked folders. You can do really, really clever things with those. Or you can, pick a time that you don't use your phone. Maybe it's in the evenings, it's in the mornings. I need to get back into it. This is a reminder to myself, but I used to do digital detoxes on the weekend. So I just wouldn't, go on my phone on the weekend unless it was, just to get in touch with the people I was seeing or whatever it might be. Switch how you get your news. It doesn't need to be all the time, but it could just be something different. I found that particularly after we had the daily COVID briefings, this is a more general point, I guess, in climate anxiety, I just felt like my whole day surrounded around, sitting down and listening to the briefing, and it was quite all encompassing. So one of the things I started doing this year is I love the newscast BBC podcast. I don't think it's the best, but I think it's quite a nice little nugget every day of, what's happening. And I've started listening to that on my dog walks, getting outside, no matter the weather. I don't know what the weather is in Aberdeen. We've got shocking weather today in Glasgow. It's all, yeah, I'm seeing nods. Yeah, it must be awful everywhere. But I've switched up the way I get my news. I've tried to, do it in a way that's better. Get outside, go for a walk, but still be keeping up to date. I don't want to be out the loop. You can block words and accounts, embrace it. Be liberal with your blocking. It is phenomenal. When you block someone, you don't need to see them, or you can block a phrase or a word. Helpful if you've not seen a spoiler in a TV show, you can block it and you won't see the spoiler until you've gone home and watched the Bake Off or whatever you watch. But you can block things, and I think that can be really helpful. A tip for anyone who works in climate or is a kind of climate activist and has social medias, I actually have split personal and work kind of activist accounts. So I have an Instagram that's just for me. I have a Facebook that's just for me and my family, and looking at all my middle-aged family members posting about random things on Facebook, and I love it. And then I have my activist pages, which is where, you know, it's purely climate, it's purely environmental. And I find it so helpful to be able to balance that out. And I put particularly, you know, we've just had the IPCC report out. Currently, all of my social medias are buzzing with information about this IPCC report. Sometimes you just want to go on social media, have a little scroll, check up with your friends, and not be bombarded with that stuff as well. So I found it helpful to have two things. I don't know if I'm supposed to be watching the chat. Oh no, I'm not. That's fine. Also, a tip for me was have an app that's just for fun. You know, whether it's a social media account or whether it's something else, have something on your phone that's just associated with fun, just to kind of have a break and allow yourself free time. Allow yourself free time on your phone to still enjoy the online space. I know that for me, my phone almost a couple of years ago became the only thing I would do on my phone is be talking about climate and taking actions online. And it just got a bit too much. Also, this is the point where you're allowed to bring out your phone and take a photo, or, oh, it's being recorded actually, so it doesn't matter. Follow some good news accounts. And by good news, I mean good news, like thumbs up, not just good quality. And it's because there is something really empowering about following people who have positive news to share. And it's not to hide away from the realities or the urgencies, but it's just to realize that there are happy things out there, good, positive places that you can get some news. And I've kind of listed a few that jumped to mind. There's one, you know, really cool one called like the Happy Broadcast, and it just does happy bits of news from around the world. And there's lots of other, I guess, climate related ones there. There's also books, a great book. I wonder if it's behind me. What is here? I've even got it. All We Can Save. You know, this was a book that was done by a variety of different women in the climate movement. And it was like so positive, and they've got an online account you can follow. And I think it's so important for us when we're scrolling to have those little bits of good news, things that we can see, to keep the momentum going as well. So you can go back and have a look at all of those and see. And some of the ones kind of near the bottom are also a bit more to do with climate anxiety specifically. So they also have loads of resources that they're sharing. So that's like a good place to kind of get linked in there. Also, I guess finding community in quote real life. Find some spaces that you can be involved in stuff. This you're part of. Like that's a great start. I always feel when I say this, it's like you're already doing it. But always look for places that you can be meeting up with people, whether it's like in virtual Zoom spaces or in real life, things that you can get connected in with to find community in real life. These are a handful. These aren't ones that I'm necessarily recommending to everyone. These are examples of the ones that I've done. I found that most of my climate activism sat purely online, and it was quite overwhelming. And I felt quite disconnected from other people because the only way I was communicating was just virtually. And so I decided to get involved in some different initiatives. And these are just some of them that I ended up doing. And it's just great to be able to be in contact with real people and be doing things with a bit of a mixture. And why? Because these are people that you can help also reach. And these are people that will be in your sphere of influence. And so this is just a really great thing that you can do. That's me. I will pass over to Eric.
Thank you, Laura.